Dubai. Good evening. How are you feeling today? Great. Looking forward to the session? Great. Welcome. Can I request everybody to please take their seats? Good evening and a warm welcome to all the dignitaries here today. Our chief guest, Mr. Anthony O'Sullivan, UAE Managing Partner, EY. Our keynote speaker, former chairman of ICI India, former president of ICI, Padma Shri Awardee CA Manoharanji, whose books many of us have read during our CA days. Our speakers of the day, Mr. Simon Astle and Mr. Saeed Mustafa Hussain, and all my seniors and fellow members. Welcome to our session covering a very intriguing topic, legal jurisdiction and business governance. Before we begin, let me ask you a very quick question. How many of you have worked on a project or a business that required dealing with regulations in multiple countries? Raise of hands. Regulation in multiple countries? And now, how many of you have felt overwhelmed or confused by the differing regulations and the governance structures? Have you ever felt being confused with the different structures being followed in different jurisdictions? Right? Yes or no? Now, here's a little story I want to tell you. Once an explorer was asked about the most important tool for his journey. Natural thing for him to say, the boat. Then the person who asked the question asked again, are you really sure that it's the boat which is the most important? Then he paused and said, provisions like water, food. Then again, is it really the most important thing which you need? Then he thought again and realized it's the compass and the map, which is the most important because that's what's going to get you to your journey. Because without direction, and the most prepared expedition can also go astray. If it's not having a proper direction and a proper map, even the most prepared expedition can go wrong. In the business world, one of the most important, along with the business strategy, is understanding the governance and legal frameworks. It gives you clarity, ensure compliance, and helps you steer your business forward with success. Today, we'll explore how governance and legal jurisdictions can be the compass guiding your organization through complexities and opportunities in a globalized world. Like before starting any occasion which brings us together, let's take a moment to honor the nations that inspire our spirit, fuel our ambitions, and secure our future. Let's all of us rise together with pride and gratitude as we pay tribute to the national anthems of India and the UAE, followed by ICM motto. Technical team, please play the videos.
सुप्तेषु जाग्रति य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति कामं 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 कामपुरुषो पुरुषो निर्विमाणः निर्विमाणः तदेव शुक्रं तद्ब्रह्मा तद्ब्रह्मा तदेवामृतमुच्यते तस्मिन् लोकः शतः सर्वे तदूनात्यपि कश्चन एतद्वैता 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 एतद्वैता.
Thank you very much. You may please take your seats. Now, many of us know that in India, there's a mega event which is happening called World Forum of Accountants on 31st of January 25 and 1st and 2nd of February 2025 at Yashobhumi in New Delhi, India. I'd like to request the technical team to please play the video.
Arthashastram, Dharmashastram cha, meaning economic principles, arth, and ethical considerations, dharma, which are central to the work of accountants. The entire world is deliberating about impact of climate change coupled with disruptions of artificial intelligence. India has given philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam to the world and successfully hosted G20 summit on this theme and also launched Global Biofuels Alliance. The accounting profession also has an enormous responsibility to guide the world, where accountability meets innovation so that vision can be converted into solution. The Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, being the world's largest accounting body after the successful hosting of WCOA 2022 and GLOPAC, proudly presents before the world World Forum of Accountants 2025. Where accountability meets innovation for a sustainable planet. The world's brightest minds will exchange insights, explore emerging trends, and unlock the possibilities for the profession, where foundation will be laid to shape the vision for the future of accounting profession. Hosted at Yashobhumi, the largest convention and exhibition center in the heart of India's capital, New Delhi, inaugurated by the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, is all set to host the congregation of accountants from around the world. And while you're here, experience the vibrant culture and heritage of New Delhi, a city where history meets modernity, offering unforgettable memories.
World Forum of Accountants, an experience of 3 days, insightful discussion, groundbreaking innovations, and unparalleled networking opportunities.
With immense pride, we invite you to WOFA 2025, taking place, happening from January 31st to February 2nd, 2025 at the magnificent Yashobhumi, New Delhi. Experience 3 days of insightful discussions, groundbreaking innovations, and unparalleled networking opportunities. World Forum of Accountants 2025 is where you need to be, where accountability meets innovation, AI for a sustainable planet. Join us at WOFA 2025 from January 31st to February 2nd, 2025 at Yashobhumi, New Delhi. For more details, visit wofa.icai.org.
All right, thank you very much. So I encourage all the members of our chapter to please subscribe and join this mega event. I am definitely going. So with that, we come to the next session. So, ladies and gentlemen, the moment has arrived to welcome the driving force of our chapter, a leader who inspires with vision, energy, and enthusiasm. Let's give a thunderous round of applause as I welcome our chairman to please join in the stage for his chairman's address. Give a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
A very good evening to all of you. Good evening. Esteemed, respected, our today's guest, our former president of the institute, Mr. T.N. Manoharan, rather I should say Padam Shri Mr. T.N. Manoharan, our chief guest of the event, Mr. Anthony, our other speakers flown from the London, UK, Mr. Simon Barrister, and Mr. Sayed, who was the instrumental in connecting with Barrister and crafting this event, which is important. Ladies and gentlemen, and dear members, and my ex-com team members, invited guests, and our ever supporting sponsor of the chapter. Today we are dwelling and learning on two important subjects applicable to every business and profession. First is the business ethics and governance. I remember in our family gathering or discussion with seniors in the family, they usually repeat and quote, पैसा खोया, पैसा गया, कुछ नहीं गया. हेल्थ गई, कुछ गया. पर इज्जत गई और करेक्टर गया तो सब कुछ गया. To translate into that in English, if you lost money, nothing lost. If you lost or you damage your health, yes, something lost. But if you lost your character or the integrity, you lost everything. And I remember the quote by the Henry Ford. He said that a business that makes nothing but money is a poor business. Chartered accountants are now not limited to the watchdog responsibility, and their responsibility and expectation of the stakeholders is rising, according to me, day by day. And when world is open for business, almost boundaryless, new technology, artificial intelligences are almost communicating with each other without any restriction and without any political boundaries. Under such circumstances, it is expected from the chartered accountants that he not only counts the number or balance the books, but it is said that a good accountant balances the book, but a great accountant balances integrity and profit. An accountant duty is not only to count numbers, but also to uphold the laws. This brings importance on ethics and governance of the business. And we are fortunate, and I feel privileged, that this topic is going to be addressed by none other than the jewel of our profession, ex-president of our institute, present IDY chairman, a tax guru, and maybe many of you would have read his book before becoming chartered accountant. Mr. T.N. Manoharan is with us, and thank you very much for your valuable time and joining us, sir. You are a proud member of our profession, not because you led our institute, but you also created a history in the business world. When Satyam Computer, which was a leading software company of the country, along with Infosys, TCS, and that company was almost dead after a scam or lot of compromise with the governance. He is the person who has bring that company out of death well again into the jewel of the business and converted Satyam Computer into the Tech Mahindra, which is most prestigious and respected company again. I think this is historically, this is a single evidence at international level also, when a scammed company has been revived with the higher standing and with the good governance. Ladies and gentlemen, put your both the hands to appreciate the efforts made by our own member, Mr. T.N. Manohar. Coming to the other subject of today, which is the legal aspect. When a country is run with various pockets of jurisdiction, and the legal compliance become the major challenge before all the business and professions, your ex-com thought it is appropriate to not only update and educate our members, but also get some insight in the legal framework of the country, as well as prevailing international laws which can highlight the applicability of the legal framework for businesses as well as profession. Nowadays, a chartered accountant is not required only to prepare a fine piece of balance sheet or books, but he is also supposed to keep that the business which is being run and audited and accounted is in fully compliance of the law of the lands. There are various examples in the business history where the financially sound business and well-run business could not survive long because of the non-compliance of the laws. They bring early death to their businesses. In transparent world, when there is hardly any room for hide, where your all actions are being was accounted for, and even your movement also checked by so many CCTVs. The time has gone where the ignorance of the law or non-compliance of law was a tribal issue. Now it is a most important and very critical part of the running business and profession. And I'm happy that this subject is going to be addressed none other than the leading barrister of the UK, Mr. Simon, who has come especially for this purpose and going to address about the international laws and practices. Please welcome Barrister Mr. Simon. The other important legal part, which sometimes provide more confusion, being a various free zone, DIFC, local law, local court, a well experience, more than 4 decades, a practicing lawyer, Mr. Sahed Mustafa. He will address the issue of legal framework in UAE, DIFC, local law, or how one should make the choice of the relevant law for his business, profession, or pending any legal conflict in this country. This insight, according to me, will educate all of us and provide a most important and desirable piece for our practical life. Please welcome Mr. Syed Mustafa, who has agreed to address us and share his rich experience. Ladies and gentlemen, your ExCom is continuously making efforts to keep the learning and expertise update for all the members. After this event, in this month, we have a focus group transfer pricing class. We have another focus group meeting on the weight. And as I told earlier also, we have planned our annual international conference on 14th and 15th December in Dubai. Please mark your diary and participate actively along with your other colleagues who are absent today. This is a great opportunity. We are trying our best to bring the international speakers, master of the subjects, so that all of us, we can benefit from this 2 days international conference. Just before my speech, you were seeing the video of WOFA. Our institute is organizing World Forum of Accountants in Delhi from 31st January to 2nd February. All members are requested to try to participate in this mega event, which is again going to be a big event for learning for all of chartered accountants. With this, I end my words and thank you once again for your all support and participation in the events organized by your ExCom committee. Jai Hind.
He needs a bigger round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, that's the way to do it. Thank you, Chairman sir, for your wonderful address and always inspiring whenever we hear you. We are truly honored to have with us today Mr. Anthony O'Sullivan, UAE Country Managing Partner at EY. From my personal interactions with him in the past, I can definitely say he's a leader who blends exceptional expertise and genuine modesty and an unwavering willingness to help and guide others, which truly makes him a standout personality And we are fortunate to have him here with us today. Thank you so much, sir, for joining. To do his formal introduction, for such an inspiring personality, we'll not have you here so quickly. We want our vice chairman to join with me on the stage for giving a formal introduction, and we know his style. Our vice chairman, the energy, the power. Give him a big round of applause when he joins on the stage.
Superb. I'm always amazed by ICI Dubai whenever we arrange an event. Today being Friday, still so many people have come in. Normally, everyone has a weekend plan. Can I have a round of applause for yourself? And it should be huge because the energy is required in the room for you all coming in. वो energy नहीं आ रही है. सब ऑफिस से जरूर आए. एक बार एक ताली बजनी चाहिए जो लगे कि yes, we are there. तालियां सबको बजानी है. Last row को भी बजानी है. The last row is not clapping. You should all clap. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Tony O'Sullivan, a mentor who has been guiding businesses, governments, and investors through the complexities of UAE's evolving business landscape. While we all know him today as UAE Managing Partner at EY, but his journey began in Dublin City University, which sowed the seed. And result is, he is a qualified chartered accountant with the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales. He moved to Dubai in 1998, and since then, no one could stop him. And he has played a crucial part in shaping policies for governments and sovereign wealth funds. His expertise is also with family-owned businesses and prominent publicly listed companies. He helps them to navigate both in the local market and also at international stage. One of the things that sets Tony apart is his passion for Emiratization and sustainability. Tony believes in the power of nurturing local talent and ensuring that business practices evolve in a way that respect both society and the environment. We all want world to change, but it's our duty to make sure it's changing for the better. That is what the thinking of Tony is. Because he's always inspired by one quote of Warren Buffett, which said, "It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. Better to build a reputation, better to have a better future." Now, before I hand over to Tony, I would like to take a moment as my responsibility to recognize our own past president of ICI, who is also a reason that many among us who's sitting in the audience are chartered accountants. Our own CA, T.N. Manoharan sir, thank you very much for coming to Dubai. You always bless us whenever we call you. And trust me, if you look back, there are so many chartered accountants because of your books, because of your knowledge, which you shared with the world. Sir, you are an inspiration, and your achievements and contribution both to the profession and to the lives of many students have been immense. Thank you very much. Can I have a round of applause, a bigger round of applause? Because if he was not there, maybe chartered accountancy mein humko thoda aur time lagta. We could have taken more time in chartered accountancy. Also, a heartfelt thank you to Syed Mustafa Hussain for his dedication and efforts in bringing this event together. Why? Because he said CAs are very good with numbers, but they also need to know the law and the dynamics of Dubai, how exactly the Dubai mainland and the IFC functions. And he said, I will tell them how numbers works, you tell me, I will tell them how law works. Thank you, Syed Saab, for putting this together. Without you, it would have not been possible. A round of applause for Syed, Mr. Syed, for doing it for us. Now, a round of applause for the man for whom I was invited here to welcome him, Mr. Tony O'Sullivan. Can I have you on the stage with a bigger round of applause for everyone in the audience?
Thank you, Jay. That was truly an exceptional welcome and introduction. I think I will take you with me everywhere, wherever I'm speaking, to give that introduction. It's also a little bit challenging following Jay because he brings so much energy to everything that he does that you always feel that you've got a lot to try and match. So I thank you very much for that. And thank you very much to the executive committee of the chapter for inviting me to be with you this evening. It's always good to be back amongst my friends in the Indian Institute. I was asking one of my colleagues, how big the gathering is this evening, and he said, no, this will just be quite a small gathering. This is not a small gathering for me, but I know that it's a relatively small gathering for the Dubai chapter. But it is wonderful to be with you this evening. I will keep my remarks brief because I think it's fair to say you've got some excellent speakers to listen to this evening, and they've got some great tales to be told about a business success story of taking a business that was struggling and bringing it back to its rightful place. And we've got some interesting insights on jurisdictional matters, on legal matters. So I will just make some brief framing remarks, if I may. I think we're all very aware that we're living in a very uncertain world at the moment. If we see all of the changes that have happened in the last 12 to 24 months, we have parts of the world, some of them very close to us, that are in war. We've had sort of the rise of populism, nationalism, and maybe part of that was personified last week by the election of President Trump, the re-election of President Trump. We've seen the uncertainty in economics of the move from globalization back now to a little bit more of bringing things back home and not being quite as global in how companies do business, and that brings with it a lot of stresses and strains. And that's even without the unpredictability we've seen in recent weeks of India being swept 3-0 at home in cricket by New Zealand, which was probably one of the most remarkable things that we've seen in the last few months. I think the uncertainty that we see brings with it a lot of risk for us that are in business, and most of the people in this room will be in business of some kind, whether you're in public practice as an auditor, or whether you're working with a corporate in the finance team, or whether you're maybe a senior CEO in an organization. The uncertainty that we're seeing in the world today brings with it so much increased risk for all of us. And the role of a CA is now more and more around managing that risk. It's not, as was said earlier, necessarily about producing just a set of financial statements and producing a set of records that can stand up to scrutiny. It's also around helping the companies that we work with, guiding them through uncertainty and guiding them through risk. And a big part of that is obviously understanding, firstly, what good governance involves. If you have good governance, you've got a framework in place that helps you to understand the risks that you're facing, helps you to understand how you navigate those risks, and helps you to do so in a way that's ethical and that is mindful of the needs of all of the stakeholders in an organization. And as CAs, we all have a big part to play in that. We also need to be increasingly aware of our legal responsibilities. We are living in an incredibly complex series of legal jurisdictions in the UAE. I have lost count of how many different free zones we have, but I do know that we have multiple jurisdictions here that set their own rules, set their own regulations. But more so than that, as we all know, Dubai is a global hub for trade and for commerce. And most of us here will be dealing with businesses that aren't just in Dubai. They're also trading with other parts of the world. They have businesses set up in other parts of the world. And with that comes a need to understand the very complex multi-jurisdictional worlds that our clients and our businesses that we work with are working in. I'm always mindful of, having been in Dubai for 27 years, of the history of Dubai and the history of business in Dubai and the great part that Indian chartered accountants have played in that history. When I first came here, I met with some of my clients that I would go and meet with, and you'd meet some Indian CAs that had been here since the 60s, here since the 70s. The Indian Institute has been a big part of the success story of Dubai and the UAE over many years, and many of you in the room here today were part of that for many years. So that guidance that you offered in your role as a CA to your companies in Dubai over those many years, that is even more important now as we face these uncertain times. So I really commend the Dubai chapter for the work they've put together in putting together this evening's session. It's going to be really informative, really interesting, and more than anything, it's going to be really helpful in giving us insights into, again, how we need to think about our day-to-day work. I think there were two words in Hindi that were put on the screen there to sort of summarize. I think one of them was dharma, the other was aga, which is that wasn't too bad. It's about how ethics sits at the groundswell of economies. It's a baseline that we all need to have. And I think sometimes when we're in our day-to-day work, we need to think back to what being ethical means and helping put that mindset in everything that we do. So I hope this evening will give us some thoughts to go away with and bring back to our companies and bring back to our work as we get back to work on Monday morning. So with that, I would just like to thank you once again for inviting me to be with you this evening. I'm really looking forward to the speakers, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of you later on when the session is finished. Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you.
Can we give a big round of applause for Mr. Anthony? It's a great privilege to be with him on the stage here. And I'd like to take this moment to request all the speakers and our chairman, vice chairman, and the EXCOM to join us on the stage for a group picture with our chief guest. Thank you. We also have our former chairmen with us. Sir, please, I request you to come and join on the stage for the group picture. Thank you very much. You can give the big round of applause for all the big personality on the stage. It's natural for us to do it. Thank you very much. Now, it's time to turn up the heat and dive into one of the most important sessions of the day, the session we all have been waiting for. From chaos to credibility, the story of Satyam to Tech Mahindra is a remarkable case study of resilience, ethical leadership, and the transformative power of governance. It highlights how a crisis can become a catalyst of change and a blueprint for building trust and sustainability in business. The journey from the fraud of inflating $1 billion of asset, which rocked the stock market across India, to a takeover and later merging it with Tech Mahindra is definitely not less than a spectacular achievement. Today, we are privileged to have the presence of someone who has been at the forefront of this transformation change. It's the same person whose books many of us have studied during our CA days. I've definitely done it. The one who was the former president of our prestigious body, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. It's the same man who has a lot of accolades to his name, including the Padma Shri award from the President of India in 2010. There's so much to talk about him, but we have our treasurer with us who likes to take this moment and do the formal introduction. Can I request our treasurer to please join on the stage for the formal introduction of CA T.N. Manoharan ji with all of us. Give him a big round of applause as he walks onto the stage.
Good evening. Today I have honor to introduce one of the most iconic chartered accountants in India, who is considered as a role model and inspirations amongst every CA aspirant and every professional in the country. Many of us must have gained knowledge from the books authored by him during CA journey. Definitely, myself also got knowledge when I am doing my CA and reach on this stage. Thank you, sir. For his achievements and contribution for society, profession, and for the country, Government of India awarded India's one of the most prestigious awards, the Padma Shri to CA T.N. Manoharan in 2010. But he is the first chartered accountant who got this award. This required very big round of applause. And he gave the many of the quotes. One of his famous quote is, our efforts may fail, but we should not fail to make efforts, and definitely we reach on the goal. He makes about the importance of the working hard without worrying about credit and importance of the mentor in our lives. He has a lot of achievement, some of that I will mention here. He served as a chairman of Kerala Bank. He was part of the government nominated board of revival of the Satyam Computer Services Limited. He has written his experience as a book titled Tech Phonics Satyam 100th Day Turnout. Maybe some of you have in your hand now that books also. Sir is currently a member of Reserve Bank of India, Standing External Advisory Committee, Chairman of IDBI Bank, on the board of the Mahindra and Mahindra and National Bank of Financing Infrastructure and Development. Sir is recipient of the Sharwal Award, including CNN IBN Indian of the Year 2009 Award from the Honorable Prime Minister of India in December 2009. Sir also confirmed the Civilian Honors Padam Shri Award by the President of India on 7th April 2010. List is long, time is short. Please welcome with me to the T.N. Manoharan sir on the stage.
Distinguished Chairman of the Dubai chapter of ICI, CA Rajesh Somani, and his dedicated team of ExCom members. Distinguished Chief Guest for this evening, Mr. Anthony Sullivan. Guest speakers on different topics, Mr. Simon Astil and Mr. Syed Hussain. Past Chairman of the Dubai chapter, my esteemed colleagues and other ladies and gentlemen. It gives me immense pleasure to be here this fine evening for the session on ethics in governance and learnings from the Satyam turnaround story. Before I plunge into the topic, I want to make it clear that I became director of Satyam after the scam, not before, so that whatever I say you should understand or appreciate in the right perspective. Ethics in governance assumes great significance because those who are charged with governance, interested at the helm of affairs of a public interest entity, or in a fiduciary capacity, vested with valuable resources in terms of capital, human resources, so on and so forth. And that has to be used in an optimum manner and to maximize the value for the various stakeholders. Stakeholders includes employees, customers, investors, depositors, lenders, government, regulators, society at large, and therefore their interest cannot be given a go by. And from that perspective, governance in the most ethical manner is what is sought to be administered. And the buzzword now in the corporate world is ESG, environment, social, governance. Environment is for preserving the planet, whatever it takes to do to protect the ecosystem. And current generation prosperity should not be at the cost of posterity, their well-being and quality life and their ecosystem. And the social is for the benefit of the people, for inclusive growth. And the governance is for making profit in the most ethical manner, without breaching any laws. So planet, people, and profit should be the focus in the ESG regime. And digital era has disrupted the way in which businesses happen. Governance has to be administered, and fraud mitigation measures have to be undertaken, and therefore this topic assumes greater significance. Now, in trying to understand the lessons that we learned from the Satyam turnaround story in the context of this topic, I need to set the background of the story. What are the, in the governance scenario, how various types of fraud can come in, both in the erstwhile regime as well as in the emerging digital scenario, where artificial intelligence, cloud, blockchain, data analytics, all those things have come to facilitate digital era, but they are also giving room for many cyber crimes. And therefore, various types of frauds that can occur in an organization have been experienced in these segments. And most common is the financial statement related frauds, which can impact all the stakeholders across because the market capitalization erodes overnight. If that happens, employee fraud could be one small segment, vendor related, customer related, investment scams, so on and so forth. Now, what factors have induced fraud in the past? And the future may not be much different. Greed, of course, that is always the underlying phenomena in most of the frauds. And executive incentives have caused frauds because incentives are based on certain targets, certain achievements. Then those figures are fudged or manipulated. Similarly, stock market expectations, analyst expectations have led to frauds, especially the financial statement related frauds. And accounting rules, how the gaps have been made use of, like in Xerox or Enron. Then could be failure of audits, both internal and external audit. And investment banks, their way of, driving the business, their aggressiveness. And similarly, rating agencies, although, the way in which the evaluations are done, and various limbs of governance. Like in governance, promoter or the executive management, they are all one limb. But independent directors, very important limb. And within independent directors, audit committees, the stakeholders committee, governance and nomination committee, those committees assume, greater significance from administration point of view. And of course, whistleblower policy, if it is not effective also, that could have given way for the fraud's occurrence. And these are the prominent cases of financial statement related frauds that have occurred. And as we know, Enron led to even legislating Sarbanes-Oxley Act in the US. But because of the cost of compliance going up and the rigors of the law, some of the companies even opted to get unlisted from the NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange. But merely because SOX was enacted, it did not stop frauds. Because morality cannot be legislated. At best, conduct can be regulated. And so subsequent frauds also occurred, including WorldCom, Xerox, and Madoff. All those things happened. But Satyam was first of its kind in India, and that's what we are going to now slightly dive deeper to find out how the fraud erupted and what are the learnings out of the turnaround story. Actually, it was fourth largest IT company in India, and it had $2 billion US size top line and 53,000 employees, 66 country operation, and 600 plus global customers, out of whom 185 were Fortune 500 customers. So with this kind of a premium brand in the IT sector, suddenly on 7th of January 2009, the promoter gave confession to the market regulators and with a copy mark to the directors of the company, saying that he has manipulated accounts for last 6 years, running into several millions. And immediately on that confession, the stock market share price of Satyam plummeted. And the investors started selling, offloading their holdings in a panic-driven mode. So the number of transactions, the volume spiked, but the share price dipped. So these two led to some kind of a chaos in the stock market. And various stakeholders were taken by surprise and shock. Now, what is the substance of that confession letter, the disclosure that was made? If you analyze the whole facts, and having seen it in close quarters, and it is not difficult to explain it to a forum like this, all that was done was inflating the top line without real revenue. So fictitious billing was done, and that was booked as part of the revenue. Now, once you book the fictitious revenue, you should show it as collected. Now, to show it as collected, bank statements were manipulated, forged. From US to India, bank statements were forged. And after showing it as collected, you should either spend it or invest it. But to spend such a huge amount was difficult without corresponding vouchers, corroborating materials, supporting invoices. So therefore, they were shown as parked in banks, invested in banks as fixed deposits. And to support that, bogus fixed deposit receipts were printed. And, like X Bank, 2,000 crores, Y Bank, 3,500 crores, like that, bogus fixed deposits. But it doesn't stop there. When you show bogus fixed deposits, you should also account for interest income from those deposits and include them in the income tax return. Software income was exempt, but bank interest was not exempt, even for software companies. So once you show interest income in the return of income, you should pay tax on that return. In fact, in one of those days, early days, when the CBDT chairman and I met in an occasion, he took me aside and asked me, Manoharan, if we reopen Satyam's case, whether we have to refund the tax paid on non-existing interest income. That was his worry. I said, I have not studied it from that angle, so we'll have to wait and watch. Good that I did not commit, because later we came to know that even tax credits claimed were bogus, significant extent. So, and all this happened under the name Satyam. That is the irony. And because of this, what happened was profit was inflated. Hardly there was 3% of profit margin, real profit. It was consistently boosted up to 24% margin to maintain or meet with the shareholders' stock market expectations. And, but a genuine attempt was made to clean up the balance sheet in December 2008. What was the endeavor? Endeavor was there were two companies belonging to the family members, two sons of the promoter of Satyam, namely Matas Infrastructure and Matas Properties. The Matas name is reverse of Satyam in terms of the spelling, if you see. So Matas Properties had huge land bank, and Matas Infrastructure also had certain asset bank. So the idea was to take over under Satyam those two enterprises, bring in those land parcels after revaluation, and show as if these fictitious bank deposits were paid as consideration. With the result, the bogus assets will exit from the balance sheet, real assets will come into the balance sheet. But shareholders did not know this is the intent. So while directors approved it, it was voted down by the shareholders. They did not approve it. With the result, not only that, why confession, if you ask? This was one reason, because the gap was widening and the danger of getting exposed and takeover was also imminent. But on the other side, from the business front, that was the time when global financial crisis occurred, 2007-8. And while Indian banks were not impacted by global financial crisis, all the software companies, IT companies like Satyam were deeply affected, because the flow of orders from the Western world started diminishing. So there was not enough orders that were flowing in. That led to liquidity crisis in software companies. That's why most of the software companies, though they interviewed the candidates, every year they recruit, but that year they did not send joining letters. So because of that, the crisis, in fact, Satyam started borrowing to pay loans. The monthly salary bill was to the tune of $105 million, which was then equivalent to 500 crores of Indian rupees per month. And US salary was fortnightly, and rest of the world was monthly salary bill. So under those circumstances, I think he felt better to surrender. Certain other extraneous circumstances were also there. So all that cumulatively led to his confession. And in the confession letter, he writes, it was like riding a tiger, not knowing how to get off without being eaten. And that indicated as to how it must have all started in a small way 6 years ago and kept on piling up. And a day came when it was unmanageable. And there was no way he could wipe it out also or clean it up. And therefore, he had to surrender. That's why Satyam is unique on many aspects. The first aspect is generally frauds, investigation leads to confession. Satyam was first of its kind where confession triggered the investigation. Till then, the world was not aware of this kind of a fraud or scam existed. So this is the background with which we need to look at the Satyam story. Now, in fact, when, during student days, chartered accountancy student days, we used to debate whether accountancy is an art or a science. But after entering Satyam, I realized it could be a fiction, where figures can vanish. Of course, after entering practice, I realized, execution of work is a science, but collecting fees from clients is an art. That is, then only you can survive. Now, the various stakeholders who got affected because of Satyam scam, the investors panicked, and class action suits were filed in US courts because there, in Indian law, that right was not there till then. And then employees were the worst affected lot because they were stranded in many ways, which I'll explain a little later. And the customers were shocked and worried about the continuity of the project and confidentiality of the project. And bankers, of course, Satyam was not highly leveraged company. The borrowings were hardly, both fund and non-fund based, was to the tune of about 700 crores only. Because for the size of that company, that was nothing. Whereas assets were much more worth. And government was government had to fix this because that was the time, India was projected as most attractive destination for global investment. And besides, IT sector was putting prominently India on the global map, building reputation and goodwill for the Indian products, solutions, services in that segment. So if Satyam is allowed to collapse, then surely the image of India would be dented. So this had to be addressed. So that is why government had 3 options. Of course, 2 options, conventional options, which also was experienced in US. One was announcing a bailout plan. Even in America, when the global financial crisis happened, all the banks, American banks, suddenly realized that in their balance sheet, on the right-hand side, nothing was left, and on the left-hand side, nothing was right. And the government had to infuse funds by legislating a law for bailout plan, infusing taxpayers' money. Because global financial crisis was preceded by subprime crisis, where the bankers started dispersing loans through intermediaries without meeting the customers, without knowing KYC. In fact, many loans were given on self-declarations, based on self-declaration that the borrower had the ability to service the debt and repay the debt. But most of those borrowers, as a matter of principle, did not pay interest. In their own interest, they did not repay the principal borrowed also, which led to that kind of a crisis. So, bailout plan. But that was not something that can work in India because taxpayers' money infused for saving a private company would never be accepted. Therefore, that was not resorted to. Alternatively, allow the market forces to determine the destiny of the company. Let it survive or collapse. Let the market decide. But that was also dangerous because of the reason I mentioned. Already all the IT guys were not getting job orders. A lot of unemployment is brewing. And if these 53,000 employees are also thrown in the market and the company collapses like a pack of cards, what will happen? So that was not desirable. And this happened in January, and in the month of May, India was in for public elections to elect the new government. So very sensitive period as well. So therefore, I think it led to choosing a third option, to think out of the box, dissolve the board, select few individuals from different walks of life, create a public-private partnership. That is another second unique dimension of Satyam's story. First was that confession leading to investigation. Second was, it was not done by either government alone or an agency or regulator or a bureaucrat. It was by unconnected professionals drawn from different walks of life in collaboration with the government and regulators who gave moral support, legal support, no financial support. So that is how it originated. And of course, we wanted absolute freedom in our operation, which was given, and we had to manage the show. And actually, Satyam, the story begins, the gravity of the situation, we wanted to assess. But that was obvious even before entering the company, because as I got down in the airport and taken by a travel agency car, the driver, after gaining little bit of familiarity with me by informal conversation, slowly made his request. Sir, my boss wanted to tell you 6 months bills are pending, so please settle it. And same story repeated when I walked into the hotel room. I was escorted to directly, no reception, to the room, completed formalities. Then the duty manager said, sir, 3 months bills are pending. So that gave an idea. And later I was shocked to know that even tax deducted at source from employees' salaries were not deposited to the government, income tax department. PF, ESI were in arrears. In fact, the ESI commissioner wanted to file FIR to the government-nominated directors, saying, now you are in charge, so if you don't pay, I'll file FIR on you. So that was a criticality, and the magnitude was phenomenal, because I'm talking of 2009, so 2,000 crores of rupees were outstandings to be cleared, and 1,700 was supposed to be the collections due from customers, out of which we did not know exactly how much was bogus, how much was genuine. Later realized about 300 and odd crores were bogus, but the balance 1,300 and odd was the real. And monthly salary bill has to be paid to the tune of 500 crores. So this is the overall context in which we plunged into the turning around aspect. One of us had to be there. See, we met, no doubt, on a war footing weekly basis to strategize, to arrest the damage, to find solutions, to take mitigational measures, and to have calls and dialogue with the employees, customers, so on and so forth. But someone had to be there 24/7 to see the implementation of the strategies, the mitigation plans. So I offered to be there 24/7, not because I was unemployed, but because just then I laid down office as the president of ICI 1 year ago. So it was easy for me, having devoted time then for profession. I thought, let us, at the call of the nation, let us devote full time. So the priorities were very clearly demarked: financial stability, customer retention, and employee motivation. So we did not want to lose premium talent. So we motivated employees to stay back. Customers wanted to terminate the contract. We pleaded with them. All that we impressed upon them were twofold. First was, Satyam is not a fraudster. Promoter alone was the fraudster. You know that you cannot, company is independent of the individuals. So actually Satyam was a victim of the fraud perpetuated on it by the promoter. So why do you penalize Satyam? And second point we said was, government has deployed us to resurrect the company. Why don't you cooperate for a few weeks, wait and watch. If the going is good, continue to patronize. Otherwise, you can always tell us that you want to migrate. Don't do it behind our back. You tell us, we will help you to migrate to alternative service provider. And even if the alternative service provider doesn't have the bandwidth to execute your contract, we will rebadge our employees on their payroll so that your project continues without disruption. So this kind of a frank, outright kind of a speech and approach, convinced them. So they agreed on one condition. We'll have follow-up call on a weekly basis or every 10 days. Of course, we did all other measures like appointing legal advisors, auditors, forensic auditors, all that we did. And one another thing that happened was under SEC, because Satyam was listed in New York Stock Exchange, Securities Exchange Commission required the position of old-time director should be filled within 15 days after it becomes vacant. And the then existed old-time director was arrested, and therefore that position was vacant. So Satyam, government nominated board requested me, now that you are here 24/7, why not you be designated as the old-time director? I said, I'll think about it and let you know next day, because this happened at the dinner meet of that board meeting. Next day morning, I, told all the board members, I'll do more than old-time director, but without designation. Deepak Parekh asked why. I said, see, the moment you announce me as the old-time director, then the whole attention will be on me. I lose privacy, and media will be after me. I cannot work behind the scenes quietly, and confidentiality, all that will become an issue. So they understood. They said, we'll apply to SEC to extend the time. And Tarun Das came and put his hand on my shoulder and said, Manoharan, if you do it without designation, nobody will know what you have done, what you have contributed. So I also, smiled at him and replied saying, Tarunji, I am not doing it for anybody to know this. I am doing it for the nation, for my profession and my satisfaction. So why should that be with a designation? He understood it. He, patted me on the back and moved on. Just store this incident in your mind. I'll come back to this again. Like employees, I'll come back to this again towards the end. Because that is one of the lessons, important lessons. Then, so the SWOT analysis, I just did about, what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And the strategy was very, very simple, which all of you must be advising, doing, practicing in your day-to-day in consulting operations. How to tap the potentials on the various strengths, where it can be leveraged to the advantage of turning around. How to avoid weaknesses coming as hurdles, bottlenecks in the turning around. Or how to minimize the damage arising out of those weaknesses. And opportunities. See, we even told the employees, none of you are responsible for this. So why do you hang your head on shame? Why not be aggressive in the market, go for new orders, say that we are back alive. In fact, there were positive, encouraging well-wishers, discouraging adversaries also in the whole operation. So one of the adversaries sent me a message. So you are there to do the last rites, is it? Because Satyam RIP. When anybody dies, you say RIP, no. So Satyam RIP. I replied him, yes, Satyam RIP. And for Satyam RIP means recovery in progress. So that is what is happening now. So these opportunities, how to tap, how to exploit. And threats, of course, they apparently, visibly they are threats. For example, media. Media was keen on publishing every possible sensational news. Of course, that is their job. That was damaging, making our task much more difficult. And any positive things we mentioned to them, it may not be sensational, therefore it was not published. So therefore, we started our own weekly news bulletin to the customers to let them know what positives are happening, subject to confidentiality. Every day evening, we used to send a mail to all employees on updating what is happening progressively in the turnaround. So that kind of a measures we resorted. But over a period of time, we became friendly, or we gained confidence and familiarity, affinity with the media also, who started supporting. In the later part, in fact, they supported us to get the best of, takeover price, I would say, by publishing some of the critical data which we shared with them. So this is how the journey continued. And we did not know how long it is going to take, but now I can measure and say for 15 weeks, that is for those 100 days, there was no owner in control of the company. And on behalf of the government-nominated board, I was there doing everything which Ramaling Raju was doing earlier, except the fraud. And the modus operandi, I've told you, to a certain extent, weekly meetings and all, but we also raised a stopgap arrangement from Bank of Baroda, 300 crores, and IDBI Bank, 300 crores. And we cleared all the dues. We never defaulted on salary payments also. And we started gaining confidence of the customers and collected funds. And we also, had this communication channel with employees, leadership calls, customers, all that going on. One critical decision we had to take, whether to wait to clean up the whole thing and then offer Satyam for takeover, or as is where is condition, it has to be given. We consciously decided that when we walked in, Satyam was in ICU, a patient in intensive care unit, struggling to breathe. So we gave it the financial oxygen and other medicines, and therefore it has been shifted from ICU to normal ward. But it is barely able to walk now. It cannot run. And if you wait for it to run and then showcase to the outside world, strategic investor, it may be too late. It's possible that customers might feel frustrated with the longevity of this no owner kind of a scenario and may pull the plug. So therefore, as is various condition, we wanted to move on. So bidding process began. SEBI and CLB, they all supported us by giving certain exemptions, relaxations in terms of time duration, so that we could do it faster. 141 expressed interest to take over, but later we realized many of them are also fictitious. So only genuine players with credentials were only about 10 we selected. And out of that, only 7 met the criteria. Out of 7, only 5 submitted the documents. And out of 5, only 3 remained in the race because their own shareholders, 2 of them did not get approvals. They felt it is too risky to acquire Satyam. So Wilbur Ross, L&T, and Tech Mahindra participated. So we created data, for them to access to the data. We shared we made presentations to them. We created the data showroom accessible to them so that they can know virtual information at any point of time. And site inspection, management presentation, calls clarifying all that. Then we fixed up the D-Day, 13th of April, for submission of technical bid and financial bid. Actually, every week I used to have calls with the different verticals to motivate them, to keep their morale high. So on 7th April, 1 week before this 13th April, I was addressing Oracle division. I updated them and told them, you have a good news. In 1 week's time, you will have a new owner, infusing capital and taking control of Satyam. And they were happy, and they wanted some clarifications. After finishing all that, I wanted to conclude the meeting, but one executive stood up and said, this is all fine, Manogaran. Next week, if nobody comes to acquire Satyam, what will you do? Actually, my heart skipped a bit, because after toiling so much, if there is no group coming forward to take over, what can happen? But I don't know where from the answer came. I smiled at him and said, don't worry, we have plan B. He said, if you have plan B, we have nothing to worry. I said, yeah, you have nothing to worry. Go and concentrate on delivery of work. Rest we will take care. And after all of them dispersed, I was sitting alone wondering, what is that plan B I was talking about? Because there was none. But in such a situation, what was most important was to keep up the confidence and morale of the employees high, not to let them down. And anyway, fortunately, Wilbur Ross, and all the three qualified in technical bid. Wilbur Ross quoted 20 rupees, L&T quoted 45.90, Tech Mahindra quoted 58. We had a clause if two bidders are within that 90% of the highest bidder, there will be rebidding. So L&T must have thought Tech Mahindra will quote 50, let us give 45.90, and then there will be rebidding. That time we will overtake, but they missed the bus because the gap was more than that 10% margin. So this is the background. Now, in terms of learnings, that time company law bill was pending in the parliament. Immediately after Satyam, government withdrew the bill and made a lot of changes. They also asked me for suggestions. I gave some suggestions, but with a caution. I said, don't do amendments with knee-jerk reaction. Satyam is an aberration. If you make the law quite rigid, like SOX happened in US, suddenly, genuine players in the market will find it difficult to comply with the law. The cost of compliance will go up and all that. In fact, even when I met in person the corporate affairs joint secretary, I even shared an anecdote with him. There was a train accident. The train derailed from the track, ran into the paddy field, and managed to stop after 100 or 200 meters after injuring many passengers. An inquiry commission was constituted. The panel asked the driver what happened. The driver said, I was going at a considerable pace. Suddenly there was an intruder on the track. The panel got wild. Don't you know that one intruder's life is not important, considering the safety of hundreds of passengers you are carrying? You should have run over that intruder. Driver got equally wild. He said, with 27 years of experience, do you think I don't know this basic thing? I wanted to run over the intruder, but he started running into the paddy field. What can I do? So this is exactly what happens when you start legislating for exception. Somebody is breaching the law, violating the law, and runs into the paddy field. Law cannot be like the train chasing the intruder. It will damage the genuine players in the market who are otherwise complying. But nevertheless, all these are reality. Some are working well. But of course, even Corporate Companies Act 2013 also got diluted subsequently. A lot of criminal provisions have been converted into civil consequential provisions. So just as SOX got diluted, even company law got diluted. Now I think it is struck a balance. But more importantly, what I learned from life's perspective, I will not highlight everything, but some of these, I think, like I was telling about employees. Employees were the worst affected lot, I said. Why? Because, they were not sure whether the job is secured. But next month, their job will continue or not. Whether the pay package, salary will be credited to their bank account. Whether their post-dated check of housing loan, automobile loan will get honored. Whether, some of them had need for funds for their, higher education in the family or marriage in the family. Suddenly, they realized all their savings were in the ESOPs of the Satyam, which was not worth the paper on which it was printed. So their entire savings got eroded. And similarly, in terms of the Hyderabad, the headquarters of Satyam, they were premium customers in any joint. But after that, the situation changed. In fact, the finance guy whose name was every day appearing because he was summoned by CBI, Enforcement Directorate, his name was appearing. He told me, my neighbors have instructed their children not to play with my children. And when he walks into the social function, everybody gives way. Not because he is a VIP, but nobody wants to show that he is known to him. This is how employees were the worst affected lot. But nevertheless, and many of them came forward and said, we are willing to waive our pay, variable pay, and work. Some of them wanted to terminate because of the pride, their reputation was at stake, they felt. But we pleaded with them, we are nobody for Satyam, but you are what you are because of Satyam. So stay back, this is the time the company needs you. and give us a helping hand in turning it around. Few months later, you can look back with a sense of satisfaction that you showed gratitude to the organization when it needed the most. Thereafter, you migrate anywhere you want, and they stood by us. They continued and showed that, and in fact, that was reflected. I told you that customers continued to patronize on one condition: every week call, fortnight call, and all the follow-up calls. In every such call, after answering their queries, I used to ask them one question: how is the service delivery by the Satyamites? And every customer unanimously said, before the scam, it was good, now it is the best. You know, that indicated that the employees have taken it to their heart, now or never, do or die. And they have put their heart and soul. So which also gives an important lesson that if human resource or, you know, they have their resilience, nothing is impossible to achieve in any crisis. Some may be destined to succeed, but if they are determined to succeed, nobody can stop them from succeeding. And similarly, in terms of, you know, by sheer hard work, vision, competence, you can reach the top. Like your chairman was mentioning the introductory remarks about integrity. So by sheer hard work, vision, competence, you can reach the top. But to stay there, you need honesty. You need integrity. Otherwise, the fall could be mighty. That is another important lesson that was learned. And what should be the, you know, philosophy of life in terms of, you know, I think the promoter of Satyam reversed it. You love people and use wealth. But instead, if you start loving wealth and use people to earn it, things can go wrong. So like this, and in fact, one of the media persons asked me, Manogaran, you are all temporary directors. What is that you can achieve? Satyam is a sinking ship. So I said, see, we are all mortals, but employees, the organization is eternal. So from that angle, that is what I've given. We are mortals, but institution can be eternal. So Dubai chapter also should go on from strength to strength. And finally, this particular award, I told you, Tarun Das said, nobody will know if you don't do if you work with it without designation. I said, I'm not concerned. But 1 year later, he took the initiative, got the nomination signed by all other directors of government and recommended to the government to give me this award. So he took the initiative, which only shows that do your duty unmindful of the consequences or the rewards, but recognition will definitely come to you. So that was the biggest learning. And I felt because of the unique aspects of Satyam, confession triggering investigation and public-private partnership, and without taxpayers' money, the organization could be able to turn around. Best is to, document it. That's why, this Tech Phoenix in English. And of course, since it happened in Andhra, Telugu, and since I live in Tamil Nadu, in Tamil, all those 3 editions have been done, just for your information. So thank you very much, wonderful opportunity and patient listening.
Wow. I think I don't have to say round of applause. There's a standing ovation. Brilliant, sir. Thank you. Really impressed. And that was the expectation. And we really love you for all your experience and for always guiding us into our journey and learning from you all the time. So, all right. So, I'd like to request our chairman, vice chairman to please join on the stage to present a bouquet on behalf of all of us to Mr. T.N. Manoranji. And also like to request our Hanumanji, can you also join on the stage? And Anthony, please, if you can also join us, say we want to present our bouquet to you as well. So we thought we'll grab the perfect moment to have you both the stalwarts on the stage with us. Surendraji, can you also join on the stage? Surinder Jain. So we want to also take this occasion to launch the book of CATN Manoranji. So can we have the technical team bring the books on the stage, please? And also the XCOM, kindly join on the stage with us. Can I request the speaker also to join on the stage with us for the book launch? All the former chairmen, sir, please you can join on the stage with us. Rajuji, Venkatesh, sir, please join on the stage. Nimish bhai. Stay on the stage, please. We also have our second quarter newsletter. Stay on the stage, please. Stay on the stage. We have another newsletter to unveil, our second quarter newsletter. Can we have the newsletters on the stage? Can we have a big round of applause for the XCOM team who has spent time to do this, and last night they ensured it is done and it is printed today only. So hats off to the efforts of the team. And credit for this newsletter goes to Ashna, Amit, and Sanjay. They have really worked a lot of efforts to ensure this is done. Thank you so much for getting it done in time and in a beautiful way. Thank you. All right, everyone. We are now diving into one of the most critical topics in today's business world: strategic approaches to dispute resolution and international enforcement in cross-border commercial contracts. Before we start, how many of us have heard these headlines? The company has won billions of dollars of business. We read it in the books, right? I mean, the newspaper, $1 billion contract, this 100 million, like this. Do you read it like this kind of contracts? Raise of hands, please. Some are still in the previous presentation, it seems. Can we raise a hand? Have you read those billion contracts been awarded? Yes, I can see some hands. It's impressive, isn't it? But have you ever stopped to wonder what lies beneath those massive deals? The truth is, beyond the celebration, there is an intricate web of clauses, especially dispute resolution and enforcement, that can make or break the deal. Imagine signing such a lucrative contract only to realize when a conflict arises that you've been born to litigate in a jurisdiction with laws completely alien to you. Take the Amazon versus Future Retail saga, what started as a promising deal ended up in a prolonged legal battle across border due to jurisdictional challenges. Today, Mr. Simon Estill, who is the chief executive of 3PB Barristers, and with over 3 decades of transformative leadership in the UK legal sector, is among us to help us unpack these complexities, sharing those practical strategies to craft smarter contracts and ensure seamless cross-border enforcement, who I'm sure have seen the good, bad, and the ugly when it comes to international disputes. And before we invite him onto the stage, I'd like to request our ever-enthusiastic ExCom member, Sia Ashna, to join on the stage for the formal introduction. Give her a big round of applause as Ashna joins on with me on the stage. Big one, please. Let's put the energy because we have got a lot to cover.
Good evening. Legal jurisdiction is like a game of chess, isn't it? Everyone thinks they know the rules until someone accidentally knocks over the board. And as regards business governance, there are 3 P's that you should remember: policy, procedure, and paperwork. But just remember, the last one is really the heavyweight. In today's interconnected world, businesses are increasingly engaging in cross-border transactions, making commercial contracts a cornerstone of international trade. However, these contracts come with unique complexity, ranging from differing legal frameworks and cultural nuances of currency risks and dispute resolution mechanisms. Today, we have amongst us Mr. Simon Estill, who is the chief executive of 3PB Barristers, brings over 3 decades of transformative leadership in the UK legal sector. As a former managing partner of Howie Ingram LLP and risk director at Shakespeare Martineau LLP, he has driven significant organizational growth through strategic mergers. A corporate finance specialist with proven expertise in legal tech and regulatory compliance, Simon has successfully navigated major industry transitions, including the 2008 financial crisis. So let us hear out from him without taking much time. With a big round of applause, welcome Mr. Simon.
How on earth do you follow those previous speakers? Mr. Chairman, members of the Executive Committee, members, ladies and gentlemen, I am enormously grateful to you for the privilege of addressing you today. And I'd equally like to thank my good friend Mushtaba Hussain of Emirates Legal, who put this together, and for his help. I want to speak to you today on a number of topics, particularly looking at cross-border commercial contracts and their enforcement. As we've heard today, they are difficult, they need to be got right, and I believe that together, accountants and lawyers will get that right. We'll walk through the evolving landscape of enforcing commercial contracts across the 3 major jurisdictions that we're involved with here: the UK, the UAE, and India. This analysis is particularly timely on the convergence of landmark court decisions, shaping enforcement principles, the groundbreaking 2024 India-UAE bilateral investment treaty, the growing importance of interim relief mechanisms, and the evolution of the specialized commercial courts. Each of these 3 jurisdictions offers unique advantages and challenges, and understanding these is crucial for effective contract structuring. Starting with the UK, which continues to retain an important role in setting global standards in commercial contract enforcement. The UK operates under a common law system, providing predictability through precedent. The Commercial Court and the High Court feature specialized judges with international expertise, and the Arbitration Act provides robust support for international arbitration. There are a number of key cases which have proven this, and also proven how our courts in the UK respect the judgment of others. Enker and Chubb, 2020, revolutionized arbitration agreement interpretation, established the three-stage test for governing law, the express choice of the contract taking precedence, and the implied choice examined through contract construction, with the law of the seat as a default connection, and how does that impact on drafting practices and enforcement strategy? Strategic advantages. London's position as dispute resolution hub, strengthened by its legal infrastructure, its specialized commercial judges we've referred to, its very strong support for interim relief, and its clear precedence on arbitration matters, with its sign-up to, as many others, to the New York Convention. The UAE, where we're all sitting at the moment, itself a rapidly evolving enforcement landscape. Its traditional hybrid system combining civil law and Sharia principles, with the DIFC and the ADGM sitting outside of that as specialized commercial zones with their own systems and their own legal jurisdiction, but equally exhibiting strong reciprocal enforcement relationships between both the onshore and the offshore courts. The 2024 India-UAE bilateral investment treaty, I believe one of the first under India's 2016 model bilateral investment treaty, creating specialized enforcement mechanisms, establishing timeline commitments, and providing for mutual recognition with joint committees for enforcement cooperation and fast-track procedures for commercial awards. The DIFC and the ADGM as enforcement hubs, how do we view those? English language proceedings, they themselves are operating under common law principles, and the conduit of jurisdiction function that they have, with their enhanced recognition under the new BIT, specialist commercial expertise within those courts, and efficient enforcement timelines. India's enforcement landscape undergoing significant transformation, as we've heard. The traditional challenges of complex procedures under the Civil Procedure Code, the distinction between reciprocating and non-reciprocating territories, and historical enforcement delays have all been challenges which are being met. Those modern developments, the 2024 India-UAE BIT, as we've referred to, streamlining those enforcement procedures, looking at that modified Civil Procedure Code requirements for the UAE, and looking to expedite recognition timelines. And importantly, enhanced interim measure recognition through specialized court procedures. And as we'll come on to, those interim opportunities are very important. The practical framework, three-tier enforcement systems. UAE, the bilateral investment treaty. The UK is a reciprocating territory with India, and some others where maybe fresh lawsuits are required. In conclusion on this point, Effective cross-border contract enforcement requires strategic jurisdiction selection. Consider the enforcement efficiency. Consider, importantly, the opportunity to evaluate interim relief. And consider, equally importantly, where the asset treaty provisions lie and what is the availability. So the practical elements of contract drafting that are coming out of that, we're looking very much to put down clear governing law clauses with very specific enforcement provisions, interim relief mechanisms, and emergency arbitration options where available. The asset protection strategy is where your accountants and your lawyers can come together. Strategic asset location, enforcement pathway planning, and that interim measure availability, equally important. So I want to now move on to, having discussed that, onto the actual drafting of the contracts. And particular, again, we're looking at the contracts across the UAE, the UK, and India. And what are the key considerations, particularly when we're considering how we're going to take those contracts and look at those as an effective dispute resolution mechanism and enforcement opportunity. Choice of law is key. English law has a well-developed commercial jurisprudence with predictability and certainty in interpretation, a strong precedent system, and is widely recognized internationally. Indian law, a common law foundation with statutory frameworks, a complex enforcement landscape, and a very strong arbitration framework, particularly post the 2015 amendments, and with a strongly developing and now very relevant international commercial jurisprudence opportunity. And the UAE, where we are, based on that civil law, recent modernization of the commercial laws are now to the advantage of us in looking at reciprocity. And again, within the DIFC and the ADGM free zones, the common law framework that is familiar to so many of us, and itself giving a growing body of commercial precedents and statutory frameworks to help us along. So let's look at the strategic jurisdiction selection. The DIFC ADGM courts, the common law jurisdictions we've discussed within the UAE, they have a direct enforcement mechanism with the onshore and the offshore courts, and optional opt-in jurisdictions. With the English courts, the commercial court system is set up to deal with reciprocity and also to deal with the cross-border element. Worldwide freezing orders, when we're looking at where our assets are and how we can secure those, and a strong track record in complex disputes. Extensive and important reciprocal enforcement frameworks are a vital part of getting to where we need to be in short order. The Indian courts have a growing acceptance of foreign judgments, very strong interim relief powers, and the recent commercial courts and the specialized commercial courts helping us to get to the stages we need when we're looking to protect our clients and particularly their assets. So what are these dispute resolution mechanism that we're talking about, and we now need to look to build into our contracts. Stepped dispute resolution frameworks becoming more and more important. In that, we're looking to escalate through a series of timed procedures to try and reach a settlement. And I'll give you an example, if I may. Sample stepped clauses could go something like this. Dispute notice and definition. Point 1. Any party claiming a dispute has arisen must give written notice. So that's the dispute notice served to the other party. Importantly, what does that dispute notice need to set out? That needs to be put into the contract. What validates that dispute notice? A detailed description, supporting documentation, and where is the proposed resolution? Then we look at an internal escalation process potentially. It needs to go to a project manager, let's say within 5 business days of a dispute notice. And then again, you would seek to put a time limit on that internal process. Resolution must be attempted within the next 10 business days. If that doesn't happen, then we raise it again to a senior executive level. We look to a meeting within 5 days, perhaps, of the project manager escalation. The key thing is to have determined periods set out in the contract so they cannot be themselves disputed. And again, resolution within 15 days. And executives, importantly, with settlement authority, must be present at any meeting. Otherwise, you are in danger of getting a settlement which then has to go off and, quote, be thought about. You need to get it dealt with there and then. If none of that works, we move to mediation. So if not resolved through negotiation within 30 days of dispute notice, mandatory mediation, let's say under SIMC, the Singapore Mediation Centre rules, stipulate the rules. Mediator selection within 10 days. Mediation to conclude within another 45 days, as example. Set the rules, set the seat, set the language, and we'll come on to that at a later stage. It may be that the dispute is more around technical disputes, in which case, if they are identified as technical in nature, then we need an expert appointment to determine that. That expert appointment to be made by the appropriate professional body to ensure we've got objectivity and the right expertise looking at the right points. Let's give that another 30 days. And you can see how the escalation is starting to move through the system. Let's also agree that that expert decision is binding. And that's key to get that into the contract, unless an arbitration notice is served within, say, another 14 days. If we still haven't resolved the dispute, we're now at the arbitration phase. So we need to set down now, what does arbitration mean? Which rules are we going to work with? Are we going to work with SIAC, which is very much favored by many Indian companies? Where are we going to seek that arbitration? What's the governing law of that arbitration? These need to be set down in that contract to keep that contract clear and to make sure the dispute is the main focus and not where the dispute is being resolved. Do we need to have an expedited process? For instance, if a claim is under a certain amount, let's say $1 million. We don't want to drag everybody through the courts and very expensive systems for a relatively low-value claim. We also have to be very conscious that interim relief may be something that we need to consider when we're drafting these contracts. And so nothing in these clauses should prevent any party from seeking urgent interim relief from a court of competent jurisdiction. That allows assets to be secured where they need to be secured and stop them dissipating. What are the conditions set to allow this to happen? The valid dispute notice, the validity set out in the contract, the completion of negotiation and the mediation steps, with the exception we've just referred to of the urgent interim relief. So where are our jurisdiction-specific considerations going to come from in this respect? Let's look at the UK court approach. The UK courts will enforce in case of sufficient certainty, the clear time limits required, and specify the consequences of non-compliance. In the UAE, the DIFC recognizes step clauses. The local courts may require different approaches, translations. The local courts, the onshore courts, may need an Arabic translation as an example. And consider the public policy of the jurisdiction in which we're operating. In particular, where we cite at the moment the UAE, there is a public policy against compound interest clauses, as an example. So if you're looking at enforcing on the onshore courts and you're looking at claiming interest, simple interest is probably a good guidance. That said, recently the DIFC has confirmed a compound interest clause because the public policy, which is quite restricted, said that our public policy is to give the DIFC freedom, and that overrides the interest point. The Indian position. The Supreme Court upholds mandatory mediation. The time limits must be reasonable, and the clear triggering events set out. So what are those triggering events? A dispute, going back to our drafting point, shall be deemed to arise when written notice identifying the dispute, the amount of the dispute exceeds a defined threshold, with the technical agreement certified by a given expert. And each step, in summary, is time-bound, and that is very important. Negotiation, 30 days from notice. Mediation, 45 days from negotiation end. Maybe a cooling off period if that's agreed between the parties. You might also want to consider, depending on the nature of the client that we're dealing with, whether carve-outs to a particular clause is needed, required, or just generally a good idea. For instance, do you need intellectual property disputes to be dealt with separately? They can be very expensive, they can also affect the brand, and they might need more urgent treatment. Urgent injunctive relief clearly is not going to follow that timeline, and that needs to be left as a carve-out. And if payment defaults exceed perhaps a given threshold, is that a carve-out? And the important thing is to get the definition and the certainty as much as possible into the contract terms. The arbitration considerations. Again, where do you seat your arbitration? London, neutral and established. Singapore, very much favored by Indian companies. The DIFC, which has the UAE enforcement advantage as we're sitting here. Which institution are you going to use? LCIA, SIAC, DIAC. Lots are available. They have their pluses and minuses. So looking at then at the multi-jurisdictional enforcement strategy, the UK judgments, they are direct enforcement in the UAE through the DIFC. There is a reciprocal territory status with the Indian courts and authentications which vary across the different courts, and time limits may differ by jurisdiction. UAE judgments. UK has common law enforcement principles. India will look at them on a case-by-case basis. Requirements in the DIFC for judgment conversions, I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about that later. And treaty framework considerations all form part of this aspect. Judgments from the Indian court. Reciprocal territory status with UK, UAE, and the offshore courts. Proceedings need to be considered. Do we need fresh proceedings? And authentication, apostille requirements are all factors to be taken into consideration, as well as limitation periods. So as an example, a comprehensive dispute resolution clause could say something along the lines of governing law. This law will be governed and construed in accordance with English law, whatever you may choose. A dispute resolution, negotiation. The parties shall negotiate in good faith, and we'll come back to that language use for 30 days. Mediation, SIMC mediation rules. Arbitration, SIAC rules. Seat Singapore, 3 arbitrators, English language, emergency arbitration provisions apply. The more definitive you are, the quicker you'll get through this, and the less you get challenged on the contract. And it's about building that in with definition, with clarity up front to avoid the problems coming down where the dispute has arisen. Interim relief. The parties may seek interim relief from any court of competent jurisdiction, notwithstanding the arbitration or other agreements. And enforcement, importantly. Judgment on the award may be entered in any court having jurisdiction. So let's look at the practical drafting considerations and the documentation considerations, the documentation requirements. In the UK, coming through, standard notarization may form part of the discussion. In the UAE, the onshore courts, we've talked about the translation and having to deal with Arabic and English. In India, and I fear when I say this looking at all these accountants, but stamp duty compliance is a significant element to be taken into consideration. The notice provisions, multiple service methods, how do you serve in your chosen jurisdiction? Those are the sort of things that we need to think about. Time zones across jurisdiction, particularly when you are dealing with specific notice periods. You can very easily get yourself caught out across time zones in cross-border elements. And language requirements. Language is a really key part, and it's using language interpretation of contracts in getting this right. And what are the electronic communications protocols of the jurisdictions that we consider? So let's look at risk mitigation strategies. Where are commercial safeguards? Payment security mechanisms? Letters of credit? The UK and the UAE prefer letter of credit. Bank guarantees. The Indian system is a requirement, I believe, on bank guarantees. Performance bonds, parent company guarantees, and step-in rights. All of these factors come into consideration. The legal protections that you build into a contract. Force majeure definitions, change in law provisions, currency fluctuation, that can be a major element to take into account, particularly so if your balance sheet is not quite as it used to be or not quite as was expected. And regulatory compliance requirements. The contract that you write is a piece of paper if you can't enforce it. And if you can't find the assets or secure the assets to enforce it. So where is your asset location strategy when you're thinking about this? Where are the enforcement jurisdictions that you know you can deal with in what will be the inevitable speed that is required to secure this? Consider the ease of enforcement against where your assets are and where your contract is based. Consider those asset protection measures that you are building in, and look at those recognition requirements. Monitor the legislative changes of the contracts, and keep, and I've seen this so many times, keep corporate authorizations current. If the corporate authorizations are not current, the enforceability opportunities comes under threat. The jurisdiction-specific challenges, court delays, where are they good, where are they bad? The stamp duty we've mentioned, foreign exchange regulations, and public policy restrictions, all of these need to be taken into consideration. Do you need the help of a local agent when you're working within jurisdictions where you're not necessarily in a position that you can act on your own part? Have you identified that? What are the free zone regulations? How do the free zones work with the onshore courts? In the UK, I make no political comments. We have been through Brexit. We are no longer part of the EU. That has affected the way that we can interact with some jurisdictions. We are also in the UK subject to some significant sanctions compliance, and that can affect how we can deal with these contracts. And regulatory requirements are high. I wanted now to turn to cross-border contracts in the concept of cultural and language considerations across the three jurisdictions we're talking about, because those cultural dimensions impact contract interpretation. And very importantly, and I've been asked a number of times how and why we come as English lawyers into an area such as the UAE. And I think it's really important that you need to understand the culture of the areas in which you are operating, because it's different. And unless and until you understand what is intended to come out of the back end of a dispute and how those parties wish to continue interacting with each other, we fail as advisors to set it up properly. And certainly we fail as advisors in getting that dispute best and quickest resolved. And that is, as far as I'm concerned, is a failing in itself, but also it's incumbent upon us as advisors to get to that stage quickly. So in the UK, and when we're considering relationship-based versus transaction-based approaches, so the contract formation in the UK is very much emphasis on detailed written terms and conditions. We have a clear preference for comprehensive documentation, and with the relationship plays a limited role in contract interpretation. There is a business meeting culture with direct agenda-driven meetings, a quick movement to contract terms after initial pleasantries, a focus on deliverables and timelines. A UK company, as an example, might view multiple preliminary meetings as an inefficient way to do business. The decision-making process itself, hierarchical but relatively flat, with an emphasis on individual authority within companies, within defined roles, being able to decide and sign off. And quick movement from negotiation to documentation. So technical specifications would often be preferred over relationship building. In the UAE, relationship-centric contract formations place a significant emphasis on personal relationships. Written terms are very much a framework rather than an exhaustive set of rules, and an importance of face-to-face meetings and personal trust cannot be discounted. In business meetings, the culture is multiple meetings are expected before business discussion. Personal relationships and trust building are essential, and family and social connections are highly valued. So the initial meetings may focus entirely on personal rapport and social matters. The decision-making process is consensus building, and that is important. The roles of family relationships in business decisions. And major decisions will very often require buy-in from family members, even in corporate settings. The Indian approach is again relationship building, very important, and formal documentation will often reflect that, with the emphasis on long-term partnerships and the value placed within the flexibility on the formal structures. It's a mix of relationship building and business discussion, and the importance of understanding local business communities with regional variations such as they may be. Group consensus, very important, and the role of informal networks and relationships, and again, the importance of understanding that familial discussions with business associates when coming to a conclusion. Dispute resolution preferences in the UK. The primary approaches are strong preference for formal dispute resolution with clear arbitration and litigation frameworks and limited roles for informal mediation. The cultural factors show an emphasis on precedents, a preference for written submissions and formal hearings, and a cost-benefit analysis driving dispute resolution choices. In the UAE, strong preference for informal resolution, personal connections and intermediaries, and face-saving considerations are very much paramount and much more important. With the cultural factors and the importance of maintaining relationships and the role of the community in dispute resolution. In India, negotiated settlements, growing acceptance of formal arbitration, and hybrid approaches for formal and informal methods, with again those valued business relationships to be maintained throughout the process. The communication styles equally to be taken into consideration. And again, they follow the trends that we've talked about, from the transactional to the relationship. Language and communication challenges. So multiple language versions. We've talked about having to switch from Arabic to English in the UAE. Different interpretations from different languages, and the importance of the prevailing language version. Let me give you a few thoughts. Consideration. Consideration in the UK is an essential contract element, and it requires an exchange of value. The UAE has no direct equivalent, focusing on mutual obligations. And the impact is that UK contracts might consider nominal consideration clauses unnecessary under UAE law. Specific performance. It's an exceptional remedy in the UK, primarily for goods and services. So again, different approaches, different challenges. If you don't set it out, there are problems. In the Indian system, frustration under the UK common law and impossibility under the Indian Contract Act. So if, for instance, a contract becomes illegal, it's treated as frustrated in the UK, but impossible in India, and there are different thresholds, importantly, for the application. Good faith has different meanings in the UK, which has a limited implied duty. In the UAE, it is a fundamental principle. In India, it's increasingly being recognized, but not as expansively as in the UAE. Warranties and conditions, clear technical distinctions in the UK. In the UAE, there's a different categorization of contract terms, and in India, the hybrid approach is followed. So as we come to the conclusion of the discussions today, I want to emphasize how accountants and lawyers must work together to protect our clients' interests. The most effective risk mitigation happens when we combine our expertise at the outset of international deals. The collaborative approach in practice, when our clients, your clients, are structuring international deals, you are their first point of contact. Together, we can identify and address the documentation required that varied by jurisdiction, the stamp duty and the tax implications, the currency fluctuation mechanisms that need to be built into the contract, and the payment security requirements that differ across the regions. And the reality is that financial and legal risks, as we've heard today, are deeply intertwined. Early collaboration between accountants and lawyers can and will prevent issues that neither profession could fully address alone. Secondly, our understanding of cultural dynamics is crucial for our combined advisory work. We've seen how different jurisdictions treat different aspects. And these differences impact everything from payment terms to dispute resolution, requiring both financial and legal expertise to navigate effectively and successfully. So, I leave you with this, very close. The point was made earlier by your guest speaker, Tony. I was asked, what do we do as lawyers? I was asked in a room full of lawyers. We all put our hands up, gave terribly clever answers about how we stick fancy contracts together and all this. The person who in front of us said, that's how you do it. We are all in the risk business. And that is absolutely true. And risk mitigation is most effective when accountants and lawyers collaborate from day one. The cost of early professional fees is minimal compared to the cost of resolving issues down the line. Each jurisdiction offers unique advantages and challenges, and together we can help clients leverage by structuring those deals with financial and legal enforcement in mind. And the evolving landscape, especially with the India-UAE bilateral investment treaties, creates opportunities for clients who have both their legal and their financial houses in order, and delivers risks for those who don't. So cross-border contracts, they're not just about legal compliance or financial structuring alone. They're about creating frameworks, and frameworks that protect our clients' interests. The strongest protections will come when our professions work together from the start. So, I brought some of the 3PB team with me. I have, just very briefly, David Parrott, KC. He's going to ask all the awkward questions. David, if you just stand up for a minute. And I've got Jen as a barrister here with us as well. Jen. So they will be with us afterwards. And it just remains for me to thank you very much for your time and attention. I realize it's not the most exciting. I realize that I was put on after some very inspirational talks. But I hope this has given you an opportunity to just understand some of the many, many opportunities for us to work together, but also the potential pitfalls of cross-border contracts. And I look forward to catching up with many of you later. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Simon Estill, for such an informative session. Can we have a big round of applause for Simon for bringing this up to us? And to the entire 3PB team who is here in support of, so that shows the kind of capabilities they hold. So with that, I'd like to request our chairman, vice chairman, and Ashna to please join on with me on stage. And Venkatesh sir, please, if you can also join to present a bouquet on behalf of all of us as member to Mr. Simon. All right, so let's move to next interesting session of the day. In a country as dynamic as the UAE, where global business meets local expertise, understanding the legal framework is not just important, it's essential. But here is a question. When a commercial or a financial dispute arises, how do businesses decide whether to approach the UAE courts or DIFC? Answer could be that it is written in the contract. But a follow-up question, how do we decide which one is better to put in contract, DIFC or Dubai courts or Abu Dhabi courts, or which one? You will all agree with me that that's not as straightforward as it seems. Each forum offers distinct advantages, but the choice can have far-reaching implications on time, cost, implementation, and outcomes. Today is our great privilege to have with us Mr. Saeed Mujtaba Hussain, who is the founding partner of Emirates Legal, who will take us beyond the legal jargon, offering a practical guide to navigating these frameworks and resolving disputes effectively. I'm sure the journey of contract drafting is not as simple, but knowing from experience makes it easier. Like if you're stuck on a Friday evening traffic, the smartest way to do is to look at your Google map to guide you through. That's where the expertise makes a difference. And before we invite the experienced speaker, Mr. Saeed Mujtaba Hussain, onto the stage, I'd like to welcome my colleague on XCOM, Mr. Balram, to join on the stage for a formal introduction of Mr. Saeed. Give him a big round of applause as Balram joins on stage with me. Give a bigger one, please. He's been working tirelessly for the XCOM all this while.
After understanding the approach to handle the dispute resolution relating to cross-border transactions, now it is important to understand how to handle the local framework to handle local contracts-related dispute resolution. Dear ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm honored to introduce Mr. Saeed Mujtaba Hussain, a distinguished legal expert with nearly 30 years of experience. Mr. Hussain's impressive track record includes lead counsel roles in over 34 arbitrations and 28 DIFC court cases, boasting a remarkable 90% success rate. With 19 years of practice in UAE, he has deep understanding of local legal landscape. Mr. Hussain worked with the late Mr. Ram Jetmalani and Justice Mr. Ranganath Misra, Chief Justice of Supreme Court, for a very long period. As the founding partner of Emirates Legal, licensed across DIFC, ADGM, and AIFC courts, Mr. Hussain advises clients on matters spanning private equity, joint ventures, real estate disputes, and large-scale projects. Holding dual master's degree in international law and commercial arbitration, he brings a unique depth of cross-border cases, making him trusted authority in UAE's legal sector. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to welcome Mr. Saeed Mujtaba Hussain.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The only reason I'm wearing this mic is because I have the tendency to run away from the stage. And I just want to make sure that my voice is heard even after I walk away from the mic. I want to take this opportunity to first thank the Indian Chartered Accountant Association Dubai chapter. And before we embark on this journey, I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our Honorable Chairman, Mr. Rajesh Somaniji, our Vice Chairman, Mr. Jai Prakash ji, our Secretary, Mr. Rishi Chawla ji, our Executive Committee members, Mr. Amit Khetan, and all the Executive Committee members, and one more person who has educated me a lot in this jurisdiction, and that is Mr. Dixit Jain, who is a part of your association and an Executive Committee member. I learned a lot by reading his articles in Gulf News, and it has inspired me to understand the chapter better. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak here and giving the opportunity for the British lawyers who have come from 3PB chambers to give us those perspectives. I'm very grateful to Mr. Simon Astle, who is the CEO of 3PB. I'm very grateful to David Parrott Casey, who traveled all the way from England, and to other members of 3PB. I'm equally grateful to the members of my Emirates legal team that are sitting here. As an Indian, and a proud Indian, standing before you fills me with pride. You are the financial architects of this great nation, and your efforts resonate far beyond its borders. Now you and I, we share a unique bond. You deal with numbers, and we as lawyers, we deal with those same numbers as you deal with. When they go awry, you see them as they are. We see them as creative opportunities, and I need not elaborate on how creative our mind can get. Imagine your client. Now I'm referring to you as chartered accountants. Imagine your client arriving at Dubai International Airport. There are two directions they can take. To the left lies Dera and the Dubai courts, where proceedings unfold in Arabic. To the right, as you must have all noticed, a new road leads all the way from Dubai International Airport straight to DIFC, where the language of choice is English. Civil law, ocean, or common law, island. Where do you embark? Today, this evening, I'm your legal tour guide. That's why I'm wearing this mic, so that you recognize me in that capacity. I invite you to explore these destinations. But wait, there's more. We missed somebody. A friendly limo driver, our arbitrator, offering an enticing detour to the DIFC, now DIAC Arbitration Center. Here, your client's journey truly begins, navigating the crossroads of possibilities. So when your client lands in Dubai, they face a choice. Left to Dera, or right to Dubai courts. Or perhaps a scenic route to arbitration. Each path offers unique landscapes and challenges, and I'm here today to help you set out that course. So now we are all set for this journey through the UAE's legal landscape. Let's start by mapping out our first destination, the DIFC courts. These courts, as many of you know, are a beacon for those who are familiar with common law environment. They were established in 2004 to provide independent jurisdiction with English as the operating language, and they offer a unique island of common law in a sea of civil law. When I use these words, I really want you to really think deep about it, because you're the practitioners. You have the civil law, ocean. Common law, island. Where would you go? In which direction would you move forward, and why? So for chartered accountants, understanding the DIFC courts is invaluable. They are not only a go-to for international transactions, but also very vital for enforcing financial obligations and cross-border disputes. Unlike Dubai courts, where proceedings are in Arabic and follow a civil law system, the Dubai courts are more flexible, aligning closely with the principles and rules that you may have worked together in India, the common law principles. But this is just one stop on our journey. We will now next delve into the workings of the Dubai courts and how they provide robust structures for commercial transactions and international disputes, albeit with some unique procedural nuances. And of course, for those clients who prefer even more neutral ground, there's option of international arbitration or arbitration. This is where disputes transcend borders entirely, operating under frameworks that bring together parties from different legal traditions under one set of agreed rules. So buckle up, because our tour today is not just about what, but also about how. Practical insights you can take back to your clients. And I thank you for coming along this journey with me. And I hope you are ready to ride through this Dubai's fascinating landscape. After our first landmark of courts in the general dispute resolution process, we will navigate further into the legal landscape of Dubai. Our journey will pass through the interesting landscape of wills and their importance in estate planning and succession. In a jurisdiction like Dubai, understanding the interplay of local laws and international framework for wills is essential, particularly for expatriates and business owners. From there, we will encounter the landmark of maritime arbitration, very briefly. This specialized area plays a crucial role in resolving disputes within the shipping and logistic industries, so central to Dubai's position as a global trade hub. We will explore how maritime arbitration operates and why it is an effective tool for dispute resolution. And lastly, our journey will bring us to the international taxation rules and their correspondence as they currently exist. The topic is relevant for businesses and individuals, and it plays a significant role here. Now, with this general introduction, I want to begin the story here with the relevant experience of what you need, from my relevant experience, of what you need to know as chartered accountants when you are in Dubai, and if a client were to approach you and ask you for advice. The journey begins with the DIFC courts, established 2004, and I came around 2005. At that time, when you were in the DIFC, then the jurisdiction of DIFC was limited to companies who were within the DIFC. So if you were within the DIFC network, one company could sue the other company, and that was the guiding criteria. Now, I am witnessing Dubai's growth. I'm witnessing Dubai's history from 2004, 2005 onwards. I was here. And I just realized that as a lawyer, I was doing a lot of arbitration those days. I was not sure about DIFC courts because I thought, how will I enter DIFC? There was no room for an Indian lawyer like myself. for a big law firm for a big client to engage me and take me as a counsel who would plead the cases in the DIFC. But something very transformative happened. This is the vision of Dubai. This is what Dubai means. In 2011, an amendment is made to the rules, to the law, and they say, now any dispute, as long as parties choose DIFC as the place for dispute resolution, any dispute, whether you are connected with DIFC or unconnected, can be referred to arbitration. I realized, I said, you know what? I have to wind up all the arbitrations that I'm doing. And I have to be inside these courts. I was really fascinated by the court's structure. I was really fascinated by the rules of the DIFC court, which I then studied as a student. The beauty of this is that when this market opened up, I had all my international clients who came to me in Dubai, and they asked me this question: I want you to draft a contract for me. I said, that is very easy. Even you can draft a contract, but you only need me for one clause which I have to draft, which is the dispute resolution clause. And therefore, I said, tell me, are you giving money to someone, or do you have to receive money from someone? The person says, oh, I came here as an investor into Dubai. There's a company in Dubai. I want to invest money into this company in Dubai. So I'm coming in as an investor. I said, hold on, you have no choice. You need to choose DIFC. They said, no, I want to go for arbitration. I said, why would you choose arbitration? Because you will then go through the rigorous process of appointing arbitrators, paying their fees, paying the arbitration costs, incurring huge expenses. Then the arbitrator will give an award. Then we will win the case, and we will all celebrate, and we'll take this award, where? To Dubai courts for enforcement. And it has to go through court of first instance, court of appeal, court of cassation. 3 stages. Why would you do that? The question then was, what should we do? I said, you need to choose DIFC courts, and the only reason you need to choose DIFC courts is because if you have a claim, other party has defaulted, you can prove and you maintain the documentation of how you entered into the contract, what all you did, and there's a breach by the other party. The moment we file a claim, the other party has to go to a British or an American firm at that time that were all registered there, and they would tell them, you don't have a claim. Now, here arises the difference. In the DIFC courts, the costs have to be paid by the losing party. Now, this concept was not there in the Dubai courts. Which means, if I file a claim against you and I lose, I have to pay the costs of these barristers, and they're expensive. It is a huge expense. Unless you know for a fact, and unless you're absolutely certain that you have to recover the money from someone, the other party has no choice. Because if it is a case of admitted liability, I'm going to go for a summary judgment, not even a trial. Now comes the story. Opposite party comes forward and settles the matter. Now, I will tell you, at that time, I took up 3 cases in the DIFC courts where there was a trading of grains from India. The moment statement of claim was filed, they did not file a statement of defense. Instead, they returned all the money back to the opposite party, plus they paid the costs of the lawyers, and there was a settlement. I'm not going to tell you more than this. It is, you don't have a choice. You cannot say, a lawyer cannot tell you, I have a choice. But I'll tell you one more story. A person came to me and said, I need your help. But I'm not going to expand upon this concept. I'll start something and I'll end it and I'll leave it for your imagination, like the movie director. The person said, you know what? I'm investing money, but I'm not sure if my financial position will be there, but I'm expecting money will come to me. And I have to pay the money to these people. So I said, what do you mean? He said, it might take some time, so I could possibly default. So I need a system where I could possibly gain a little more time till my money comes. He said, I have been told by all my friends, I need to choose DIFC courts as the place for arbitration. I only told him one thing. I said, sir, I cannot advise you on this matter. That's all I said to him. He got another person to draft the clause, and he said, I did it, now can you review it? The clause said, this matter shall be referred to arbitration in accordance with the rules of DIAC. I said, I will just review the contract, but I did not suggest in any way that arbitration is an opportunity for you to buy time. So please think from the perspective of taking money where money is owed to you. Why would you go for arbitration? You must go for DIFC. If you're living in Dubai, you will go for DIFC courts. Now let's come to the framework of Dubai courts and the interrelation between them. In these 19 plus years, I had the opportunity to work with Emirati lawyers. And till today, I call them my teachers. A client comes to me, asks me a legal question on UAE law, and I say, please hold on, I'll give you my opinion tomorrow. One client got upset and said, if you have been practicing in this jurisdiction for 19 years, why can't you tell me the answer to this question? I said, because in 19 years, I know only less than 10% of UAE law. My teachers and my professors, who are these Emirati lawyers, I need to go to them and get a confirmation of my opinion from them. I was not shy to say that, and actually it worked. So Dubai courts have a system which is very different from the common law system. We have 3 stages. The court of first instance, as you know. There is an appeal, court of appeal, as you know, and court of cassation, the Supreme Court. Now, Dubai is the only jurisdiction that has its own Supreme Court. All other emirates have their own courts. And the appeals go to the Federal Supreme Court. In case of Dubai, we have our own Supreme Court. Now look at the DIFC courts structure. Court of first instance, excellent. Court of appeal. But in Dubai courts, automatic appeal, I can file for appeal. In the DIFC courts, I need to file an application showing grounds on the basis of which an right to appeal should be granted to me. Opposite party has a right to challenge that, and the judge must agree with those grounds. Second part, if I lose in DIFC, I have to bear the costs. What do I do in Dubai courts? By the way, Dubai courts are the most efficient courts I have come across in the last 5 years. I have to tell you that there is no difference in terms of the administration of justice between the DIFC courts and the Dubai courts. Both courts are amazing courts. They are courts of complementary jurisdiction. You know where the problem lies? Why we lose the cases and we blame the system? The problem lies because we have not taken proper advice at the time of drafting the contracts. We do not have a proper dispute resolution clause in the contract. You only approach a lawyer when the problem has arisen. You do not approach the lawyer to prevent that dispute from arising, as Mr. Simon Astle was trying to explain in his speech how contracts should properly be drafted. Now, coming back to there's another story, conflict of jurisdiction. Case is filed in DIFC courts. When do DIFC courts have jurisdiction? 2 situations. When parties agree, or if one of the parties is based in the DIFC. Otherwise, DIFC courts do not have jurisdiction. Dubai courts have general jurisdiction. DIFC courts derive their jurisdiction from the statute. They have statutory jurisdiction. Now the question arises, if they derive the jurisdiction from the statute, if the case is filed in Dubai courts, imagine for a second, what if the opposite party were to file a case in the Dubai courts? and think of a situation where the Dubai courts assume jurisdiction. Now, two courts have assumed jurisdiction, Dubai courts and the DIFC courts. You were doing very well in the DIFC courts. Now, what will you do? There was a law that was passed known as Decree 19 of 2019. That law said, we will now constitute 3 judges of Dubai courts and 3 judges of DIFC courts to decide which court has jurisdiction. Unfortunately, I was the first lawyer that brought 2 courts into conflict in 7 cases that I won against Nakhil. And I took those cases to the DIFC courts for enforcement. DIFC courts accepted jurisdiction. Nakhil went into Dubai courts accepted jurisdiction. Tribunal was constituted on a joint judicial committee, and they had to decide which court has jurisdiction. Law said 3 judges of Dubai courts is majority, and 3 judges of DIFC courts is minority. 3 judges of Dubai courts held that they have jurisdiction. So, majority, 3 judges of DIFC courts unanimously held they had jurisdiction. Registrar said to me, listen, I give you one last warning or you'll be out. I said, what should I do? He said, go to Dubai courts now. I went, I filed a case in Dubai courts. So, luckily, Dubai courts accepted jurisdiction and we got what we wanted. But there is another interesting scenario that I want to bring to your attention, a very recent case. All these things are important for you to think about the 2 courts. In a very recent case, what happened is, it is a bank, a Swiss bank, that was in DIFC. And they had issued a bank guarantee. My clients had issued a bank guarantee. That bank guarantee was with that Swiss bank that was in DIFC. Now the Swiss bank suddenly decided that it does not want to be in DIFC. The Swiss bank went back to Switzerland. And there was an assignment of that contract to that Swiss bank. The contract, now this is important for you to know. The contract said, in the event of a dispute, the matter shall be referred to UAE courts, and it is only the courts of UAE that shall have jurisdiction. Oh my God, UAE courts? I said, this means, how is it in the DIFC? When I was engaged as a lawyer, the case had already been filed. I filed an application before the court and I said, this case must be dismissed because this court does not have jurisdiction. Honorable judge said, you're wrong. When this contract was first signed, at that time it was signed with the party that was in DIFC, so parties knew at that time that they were entering into contract with DIFC. Therefore, I don't care about the language of the clause. Therefore, we have jurisdiction. Now, can you imagine, to cut the long story short, I won't tell you more. Every single application that exists in the rule book I filed, it was dismissed. What were the costs imposed? $1.8 million was the legal cost on my client. Just the legal cost. And they imposed costs on us on an impunity basis. And in the judgment, and certain observations were made about the counsel. And letters were written that he should be taken off the rolls. My question was, if I believed in the system, I took and I filed a case in the Dubai courts, the same case. Dubai courts accepted jurisdiction. They went in an appeal before Court of Appeal in Dubai courts. Court of Appeal in Dubai courts accepted jurisdiction. And they said, DIFC courts have wrongly taken this up. I went to get a stay, I got a stay. Got the proceedings stopped. Because we were able to show to Dubai courts why you went to DIFC courts. Because you wanted a world freezing order. Dubai courts could not have granted you a world freezing order, so you went to DIFC courts. Very good strategy to freeze all your assets worldwide. When Dubai courts saw this, they didn't agree. Finally, matter was referred to Joint Judicial Tribunal. Joint Judicial Tribunal dismissed. And they said, for the first time in the history of United Arab Emirates, the Joint Judicial Tribunal said, in this case, although case has been decided by the DIFC, but DIFC did not have any jurisdiction. All proceedings before the DIFC court, including $1.8 million legal costs were dismissed. And we had no support. We were a very small law firm. We had no support at all. Every time I was thinking, where are things going wrong? But I had the support of two Emirati learned lawyers with whom I tested all my arguments and who told me, clause says UAE courts, clause says UAE law, this means Dubai courts. So when you draft your clauses, you cannot write vaguely like this. You cannot take advantage of the fact that these are vague remedies available to you. But you have to particularly think through the process and move quickly. Now, I don't want to take more time because I will get involved with all these cases, and the essence of what I want to say has been conveyed. Now, I want to talk about, when we get a judgment. So I have 10 minutes. It means that I transgressed, and it means that all that I had prepared in my presentation, I will only be able to give it to the chairman, and hoping that chairman can share that with the members who may have an interest. So then let me keep the discussion for 10 minutes confined to very interesting issues confining to this court. Now, when we obtain an order, we have a situation here where we have a contract with someone, and we are very worried that we'll not be able to realize the money. And we are extremely concerned if that person will run away from Dubai. This is a normal thing that happens in Dubai. Now, what we are looking at is the remedies available to a judgment. Even if you have gone to the DIFC courts, there's a protocol between Dubai courts and DIFC courts, and the judgment of the DIFC courts, once it attains finality, can be enforced in Dubai courts after it is translated into English. A letter is written to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and that letter will then be executed in Dubai courts as if it was a judgment of the Dubai courts. Dubai courts cannot look into the merits of that dispute. So good news for us is, what is the good news? The good news is we can get the judgment enforced of the DIFC court anywhere in UAE, and under the Riyadh Convention, anywhere in GCC. And we can get the judgment of Dubai courts enforced anywhere. So the remedies I'm going to talk about now are common to both courts. So you are the judgment creditor, means you got the judgment, you won the case. And you can seek garnishment over movable property or debts owed to a judgment debtor in the hands of third parties. A third party may have some money owed to that party. You can go approach the court and obtain that order from the court. Very common in Dubai, we always hear about travel ban. A judgment creditor can obtain immediate judicial protection if there are risks associated with debtor fleeing UAE. You have to submit an application. You know all about how it works. And then comes the attachment and sale of assets. All this is possible, and I may assure you from my own personal experience, this is the most efficacious remedy available in UAE. If you are able to follow the law properly, I can give you an assurance and a guarantee that this is one of the most amazing things. And also, if you look into the other rules, which are the debtor's detention, Dubai courts, you have to show to Dubai courts, this person does not have the money, and this person does not have the intention to pay me the money. You will get the detention. We do this on a daily basis. I wanted to navigate through the tax thing, but let me just summarize the whole. Mr. Manoharan is sitting there. I cannot talk in front of him on tax. So I will just say only one important thing in relation to tax. We have a four-tier system here. Recently, the law was amended, and we got, fortunately, tax assessment review, optional new stage. The beauty of this tax assessment review is that you can, if you're not happy with the assessment made, you will simply send an email, and you will explain to them, these are my supporting documentation, this is this. It's optional. But if you really feel a mistake has been made, and you really need to explain things to the authority, please use this option. But if you don't want to use this option, you can move directly to the reconsideration request. But the problem with the reconsideration request is you have to put in the money first. So if 50,000 is in dispute, you need to put in 50,000 first, and then make this request. And then there's a time period of 45 days. Then there's a time period for their decision. And if you're not satisfied with that, please move to the Tax Dispute Resolution Committee. Now you have an independent committee that is going to look independently of the tax authority into this matter. Again, if the dispute is 100,000 or less, I am so sorry. You have to rest with their decision. And their decision attains finality. But if it is more than 100,000, welcome to Dubai courts. Very easy, very simple, same structure as I was talking about, Court of First Instance, Court of Appeal, and Court of Cassation. Now, you have to understand this tax dispute resolution, and you have to advise your clients in this regard. You have to tell the clients about the importance of tax assessment review and how it works, its benefits. And these were examples which I had prepared. And this is how it will work. So I will very quickly go to the last topic in 5 minutes, if you permit me, because this is a critical area where everyone is working. There is nobody sitting in this room, a chartered accountant, who has not worked with these people. There are 3 pillars here when you talk of maritime arbitration, dispute resolution: arbitration, court proceedings, DIAC. Now, think of it as a private solving problem. 2 companies arguing about who should pay for the damaged cargo, worth millions of dirhams. Instead of going to court, they might choose arbitration. Now, you might say, hey, what kind of a lawyer you are? On one hand, you are saying arbitration is not working for me, but on the other hand, you're pleading arbitration. Again, I'm looking at the subject, I'm looking at what is before me, and I'm looking at what I need. A Dubai-based shipping company, a Chinese manufacturer, had a dispute over delayed delivery of goods. They did not spend years in court, and the arbitration was resolved in just 4 months. Court proceedings, traditional route, it takes time. But I have seen a case where you wanted immediate action. You have to go to Dubai courts. Immediate means 5 days. You can get, now new law has passed, you can arrest a vessel. In 5 days, other party has to file a substantive claim against you and move forward. Now, courts, they now accept bank guarantees. A vessel cannot be put together and unnecessarily delayed, what used to happen in the past. Protection for crew members, ship vessels. Again, DIAC is a specialist center. We have heard about that. Now, this is the timeline you need to know. If you really want to know what you should choose from, just look at the timeline. And you have to look into what is your need. And if you look into your practical tips, it can be arbitration, it can be Dubai courts, it can be mix of Dubai courts and arbitration, or it could be DIFC courts, depends on the facts, and there is no fixed criteria or yardstick. It does have a huge impact, and last point, wills, the new law for non-Muslims. Now, you know what the new default rules are? 50% goes to the surviving spouse. 50% is equally divided among children. This is the new law for non-Muslims. You know the DIFC types of wills. Advantage, why should you go in for DIFC will? It covers worldwide assets. There's a clear probate process. But let me tell you one thought which you must think about when making a will. You're making a will about your asset in Europe, in DIFC. Will the asset is based there? Will that jurisdiction recognize the DIFC? Solution, have multiple wills. But make sure one will does not revoke the other. That is the turning point. If you want a better system where it is more flexible, go to Abu Dhabi Judicial Department. Even Muslims with foreign passports from non-religious law countries where Sharia law does not apply can get it. Dubai courts, in my opinion, is the best option. Now, even non-Muslims, under the new law, which came in 2022, can register a will in the Dubai courts, and you can use your own laws of your country, not the laws of this jurisdiction. And I would like to, let me conclude the talk by a few critical points. I'm not sure if I was able to clarify all these points in detail. My feeling as a lawyer is that This jurisdiction, now as it stands, is the most advanced jurisdiction. Now you need to seek legal advice. Now you need to seek legal advice at the time of entering into the contract. And in my opinion, you can ask your lawyers to draft the whole contract, but ask the lawyer specialist, can you only review one clause for me, the dispute resolution clause? Because a corporate lawyer alone cannot review a dispute resolution clause. A corporate lawyer will need the help of a specialist, because we have to look in terms of enforcement. We have to look in terms of how this thing can be enforced. So Dubai has achieved significant success, gains, and has improved quite a bit. When I look at my journey in Dubai, and I look at the progress in Dubai, somehow I feel I am a part of it. And last point for Indians living, if you have an Indian partner who wants to come here, and you're worried he will take your money away, what you must do is the following. Enter into a clause and say DIFC courts and DIFC law. Then do the business with him in Dubai. Now he defaults or she defaults. They go to India. Good news for you. Judicial Cooperation Treaty. India and UAE, the judgments of Dubai courts, including DIFC courts, can be enforced in India as if they're the judgments of the Indian courts, and the judgments of the Indian courts can be enforced here as if they are the judgments of the Dubai courts. We have several cases which I'm also pleading in India, where I'm taking the judgments of the DIFC courts and enforcing them in India, and it's working out. It is working out. So thank you very much for your time, and I don't want to hold you back. So much to discuss, but such little time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Said. First of all, I must congratulate you for your passion and the power, the way you speak. You have engaged the entire audience till the last minute. And they're still, just absorbing all the knowledge you have shared. I'm definitely in one of the brilliant sessions for the day. I must congratulate you for all your effort. Thank you very much. Give him a big round of applause for his tremendous efforts. Now I'd like to request our chairman, vice chairman to please join along with Balram to present a bouquet on behalf of all of us, and also request Amit to join on the stage to say a vote of thanks to all our members here.
Thank you so much, Rishi, for this noble opportunity, for being thankful. I know I'm the last person between you and your dinner, so I won't take much of your time. And let me start with the members itself. When the topic is good, and all the speakers are the stalwarts, but still we need the audience to listen this interesting topic. So thank you so much for all the members for being here on the working day of the Friday evening, for making this event successful. And the second element, when I was coming to this event, I listened one interesting line on the radio, and it was about the sponsors. And those lines were, TV chale remote se, or radio chale note se. So I would say that our chapter chale note se. So thanks to all our sponsors who are always supporting us for all our events. And last but not least, all our speakers. Yes, while they are doing the felicitations of all speakers, our chief guest, Mr. Anthony, thank you so much, sir, for taking your time out and grace this event. CATN Manoran, sir. Sir, we cannot express our gratitude in words. So I would say just keep coming and keep addressing us and keep sharing your words of wisdom, sir. We always love to have you here. Thank you so much, sir. Our speaker, Mr. Simon Astil. Thank you, Mr. Simon, and coming with all your team and, sharing your words of wisdom. Thank you so much. Last but not least, Mr. Syed Mushtaba Hussain. Sir, thank you so much. You are here. And thank you so much for navigating the UAE legal frame in such a beautiful way. Thank you so much. And with this, I see Amit Ketan signing off. Have a great evening, great weekend ahead. Thank you so much.